Which oppression was worse, the oppression of women or the oppression of African Americans or blacks?
They used to eat us.
Really?
Wait, what? Eat?
African Americans were eaten. Do they not teach this? They were eaten.
Do you
turned
think
into
there was
furniture?
widespread cannibalism in the United States?
This was with a specific lady in New Orleans, and she I know who you're talking about.
Wait, hold on. One example of cannibalism is not evidence of widespread.
They used to skin us and make leather out of it. Like, why is that even a question?
I think he's saying because you're only pointing to like one example.
It's not one example.
1837 on the Portuguese slave ship the Aragante, the captain killed an enslaved man, cooked him, and made the other enslaved people eat him. And the crew ate the organs. In 1831, after Nat Turner's rebellion, they desecrated his body after his execution, and then some sources state that they boiled down his body to a medicinal substance for white people to consume as an act of final triumph. Vincent Woodward has a whole book about the incidents of this happening, the consumption of black bodies, not just literally, but physically, intimately. It's well documented. And within that book, there's another slave owner, a Kentucky man, who butchers and cooks an enslaved person in front of other enslaved people as a form of psychological terror. And then in 1888, the Mercury in Philadelphia releases an expose exposing white doctors who are tanning the skin of black people to make shoes and cigar boxes. One of the physicians was quoted as saying that black skin makes a specifically enduring leather. There was also cases in Mississippi of them making belts and purses and things from black skin. Thomas Thistlewood's diaries, called the Thomas Thistlewood Papers or the Thistlewood Papers, the slave owner himself kept a documented, detailed diary of all of the torture he inflicted on his slaves, including 3,800 cases plus of SA against black women, probably one of the most common crimes across the slave trade against black women. And he also invented what was called the Derby's dose, where he would flog a slave and then rub pickle juice or lime juice into their skin and then make another enslaved person defecate in their mouth. Typically, those kind of infractions would be eating a piece of sugar cane because they were hungry. And no, Miss Ma'am, you don't know who you're talking about. Madame Lalaurie did not eat her slaves. What she did do is chain them up with iron collars, where she tortured, mutilated them, peeled their skin into strange shapes, and then murdered them. Just because you people are not educated enough to know what actually happened and you don't want to believe it because it makes you uncomfortable doesn't mean it didn't happen.
You're pushing us to the limit. And what do I mean by that? You're asking us to talk about history, the history of the South. This is in Georgia. What happened in Georgia? There were savages in Georgia. It was the ancestors of the white right-wingers. They were absolute savages. They murdered people. They lynched people. They raped people. They enslaved people. They took babies from their mothers and sold them as property. You want to talk about savages? Your ancestors were the biggest savages the world has ever seen. And so don't you dare call a black man a savage after you murdered him. Don't you dare do that. I'm so sick of African Americans being called violent when the world's worst violence was done to them, not by them, to them, not by them. For God's sake, you want to do racist stereotypes? If it fit anywhere, and it doesn't, but if it fit anywhere, it would certainly fit white right-wingers in the South, who has hundreds of years of history of being savages.
So guys, thank you so much for watching this video, and let's talk about it, because like, for my understanding, it doesn't make sense that people feel. And
I'm going to say this to all of the white people as a white person. We are the problem with this country. We have been the problem since day one. Since we designed this country to benefit white people. Beating black people, lynching black people, tearing out the fetuses.
Anatomical dissections meant that whites controlled black bodies even in death. Most of the bodies that were being dissected at NYU and Columbia University were from black burying grounds. 2 slave rebellions occurred in New York City, both in 1712 and 1741, and one of the reasons why these occurred was because of the refusal of slave owners to allow slaves to bury their dead. During the Doctors' Riot of 1788, blacks were among the 5,000 rioters who stormed New York Hospital, which lasted for 2 days. They also pillaged Columbia Medical medical school and assaulted physicians in retaliation of disturbing the eternal rest of New Yorkers. Additionally, state legislators enacted a variety of statutes to ensure that it was black, not white bodies that were being dissected and continue to be dissected in medical school. And in 1828, Georgia even proposed sending the bodies of black felons who were executed to medical labs or anatomy labs for them to be dissected on. So in 1839, Dr. Harris of Savannah was working with enslaved black people to cure them of cholera, but he was unsuccessful. However, he wasn't too upset because he claimed that he now had ample material with which to investigate the anatomical characters of the disease. In that same year, another physician, Dr. Edward Eve, intercepted the burial of one of his enslaved patients and removed her stomach. This wasn't just happening in America, as in 1828, the Burke and Hare affair occurred in Edinburgh. Between Christmas of 1827 and October of 1828, William Burke and William Hare murdered between 16 and 23 Scottish residents and sold their bodies to anatomy professor Dr. Robert Knox. However, Burke was executed because Hare sold him out for his freedom. If you ever heard the term Burking, it actually comes from William Burke, and that is murder by suffocation. The clinical material wasn't just black people, it was also impoverished white. Like in 1866, in the case of Emily Brown, who lived in Baltimore at the time. She was a poor white woman who lived in a black neighborhood where her body was then sold to the University of Maryland School of Medicine for $15 by John Thomas Ross and Albert Hawkins. The North was not safe for black bodies, as well as many northern hospitals believed and expected black people to submit to research, as an autopsy and dissection of their bodies was seen as payment for having been treated in charity wards. And while most black bodies did come from the South, one doctor even noted that a professor of anatomy in a New England medical school told me he had an arrangement in which he received a shipment of 12 bodies of Southern blacks that came in barrels labeled turpentine.
This country will never recover. There is no coming back from this. And that is, in fact, a good thing for us. America needed to implode from the inside because Lord knows there is no one outside of us that will make that shit happen. We had to do it to ourselves. This country has never been good. That was all a lie. It was all propaganda. This country was built on the foundations of racism, genocide, patriarchal systems, and one of the most exploitive economic systems that humans have ever seen in all of our history, and that is capitalism.
Our country that stands for freedom, for rightness, for justice, for everyone. It simply doesn't apply to those who are not white. It just simply doesn't apply. And we were the most rapacious, aggressive, destructive, torturing, monstrous people who swept from one coast to the other, murdering and causing mayhem among the Indians. There's one Indian in there. But and that isn't revealed because we don't like that image of ourselves. We don't like to see us. We like to see ourselves as perhaps John Wayne sees us. And and also what we've learned about the Indians has been largely taught to us by Hollywood and by motion pictures. They have educated us. So we naturally believe that when the Indians came, that the wagon circled and the Indians rode around and subjected themselves to terrible fire and died at a ratio of 65 to 1.
Both barrels of a shotgun would always get 2 Indians.
Yeah, and that wasn't the way it was at all. But anyway, Indians have been tragically misrepresented.
Yo, tell me why I just learned that the fucking church invented slavery. And it was all because of this motherfucker named Prince Henry from Portugal. He actually went to Africa and he would kidnap people and try to use them to get what he wanted. And he realized, like, yo, I can make a whole enterprise out of this. But he knew the church wouldn't back that up if it was for money. So he was like, okay, I'm gonna use the guise of converting them to Christianity, and that's why we're kidnapping them. And then the priests actually fucking signed off on that shit. And the way they picked the black folks to do it was they actually had 150 people that they kidnapped on a boat. And so they had Prince Henry ask one of his boys, like, okay, which ones do you think will be the best? And they had different religions, different races all on that boat. And so they picked black folks because they felt like they were the easiest to convert to Christianity and they worked the hardest. This is literally our history. This is the shit that nobody's teaching you about in school and they damn sure ain't finna tell you in church. Like, for real, like they've been lying about us and our ancestors for a long time. So that's honestly why everybody needs this book. This is the unwhitewashed story of America because the truth is black history is American history. They're even showing you what our ancestors really had to endure, explain what they really meant by separate but equal. They even tell you the truth and break down the two-party political system that we're still fucking dealing with today. Like, this is all the truth that they try to bury, but kid you not, like we owe it to ourselves and our ancestors to know what really happened and how we got to be here. And Black History Month is honestly the perfect month to do that. And these are actually on a good deal right now, but I don't know how long it's gonna last. So I'm gonna do y'all a favor and leave the link down below.
Because it was the white man, when they arrived here in the Americas, that slaughtered over 13 million natives. It was the white man that raped their women and daughters. It was the white man that destroyed their culture. It was the white man that took their language. It was the white man that devastated the beauty of what was here prior. And standing on the words of Archbishop Desmond Tutu, when the missionaries came to Africa, they had the Bible and we had the land. They said, "Let us pray." We closed our eyes, and when we opened them, we had the Bible and the white man had the land. See, it was the white man that went over to Africa and slaughtered millions, enslaved millions, destroyed their culture, their language, and the beauty that was there prior to us. Because see, I recall it was the white man who enslaved our black brothers and sisters once they took them from Africa here to the Americas. And for over 400 years, it's been the white man that has continued to enslave our black brothers and sisters. In fact, when they were prospering like Black Wall Street, it was the invasion of the white man that destroyed that city. It was the invasion of the white man onto the island of Puerto Rico that devastated the people that lived there. It was the white man that stepped foot into the islands and the nations of Haiti that once again devastated and left it to die. Because the reality is this: everywhere the white man has invaded, everywhere the white man has placed his foot, he has left it destroyed.
It's 100% possible. History and genetics both back it. Genetic studies, like those in the American Journal of Human Genetics, show African Americans on average have about 17 to 24% European ancestry. Most of that came through male ancestors, meaning white men fathering children with enslaved black women. And here's the hardest truth. Those women had no legal right to say no. They weren't considered human, they were just property, and that's how this happens so often. Historians estimate that 80 to 90% of US-born African Americans have at least one white enslaver in their family tree, and genetics confirms it. Mark Shriver found that 58% have at least one European great-grandparent. Of course, not everyone has submitted DNA, so these are estimates based on large-scale studies and historical record. So it's not just possible, it's overwhelmingly likely. The DNA confirms what history already documented.
So Columbus didn't discover America. You can't discover a place where millions of people already live. He got lost. He was looking for Asia and landed in the Caribbean, and things got dark. His journal describes the Taino people as incredibly friendly, bringing gifts, sharing food. Columbus then wrote that they would make excellent slaves, so he enslaved them. He forced them to mine gold. If they didn't bring enough, he cut off their hands and left them to bleed. The Taino people in their population was hundreds of thousands when Columbus arrived, and then nearly went extinct within decades. This repeated everywhere Europeans colonized. About 90% of indigenous people died within a century, one of history's largest losses of life. And we gave this guy a holiday. Columbus Day became federal in 1937 because Italian-American groups lobbied for it while facing discrimination. Understandably-ish, but Italy produced incredible artists and scientists. There are better options than a guy so brutal Spain arrested him in 1500. A Columbus holiday says conquest was worth celebrating. Indigenous people and many people still see it here as an erasure of Indigenous people. That's why we have Indigenous Peoples Day, to tell the story. It honors the communities who survived the genocide and are still preserving and honoring their cultures. Indigenous people still face colonization's legacy, stolen land, over 500 broken treaties, double the poverty rate. Missing and murdered Indigenous women barely get recognized in any media coverage. So we need to stop celebrating the man who started this all. We need to recognize whose land this is. We need to teach what actually happened. The Indigenous people's influence on democracy, agricultural innovation, nations that existed and still exist. This isn't political. This is just accurate, you guys. The land you're on has a history starting thousands of years before 1492, with people who built civilizations and lived sustainably. Their descendants are still here. They're still contributing. They're still fighting. They deserve more than a footnote while Columbus gets 3 chapters. Tell the truth. Let's honor these people. Let's learn from the cultures that understood how to care for this land. Indigenous Peoples Day is a correction to Columbus Day.
If you follow me, you probably saw my video about Auschwitz, but today I want to talk about something completely different. I want to talk about slavery. I'm talking about American slavery of black people. For 400 fucking years, by the way. It was 400 years. And you're probably thinking, I already know all about this. We talk about this in school. I don't need to learn anymore. Well, let me tell you, we actually don't talk about this in school. We don't talk about the truth of it. So let me tell you some things that I learned while researching this. And it's not that hard to research. You just have to look it up. So fact check me if you want, but here we go. First one I wrote down, you probably heard the term motherfucker. Okay, and I'm not going to do any of that corny, like, grape stuff. I'm going to use the real words because those people deserve it. They deserve to not be graped or whatever the fuck. So slave owners sometimes would force, this was a common occurrence, would force black men to rape their own mothers publicly, to publicly humiliate them and break their spirit. That's where the term motherfucker comes from. The term motherfucker comes from slavery and rape. I'm never going to use that term again. Once I found that out, I was so sick. Next up, the Atlantic slave trade, which we've all heard about, right? If you have like a public education, hopefully you've heard about this. It was so much worse than we could ever possibly imagine. And like, I mean that. Certain ships were actually invented to make it faster so that the slave traders could get more of a profit because people were dying too quickly on the ships. They had special made masts that were much higher. They were the fastest and biggest ships so that they could make a higher profit because people kept killing themselves and dying. And now let me add on to that, people committing suicide because the conditions were so horrible on the ship. They hadn't even made it to slavery yet. They hadn't made it to the plantations. And they were still killing themselves because they knew how bad it was going to be. Sharks literally changed their migration patterns because bodies were just thrown overboard once they died. However, the Atlantic slave trade officially ended in 1808, right? That was the law that was put in by the early United States government. But do you think that stopped it? No. Let me talk about the reverse Underground Railroad. A lot of Southerners went up north and they had these like gangs that would go and capture, they would kidnap black people. Even if they had never been a slave in their life, if they were escaped, no matter who they were, if you were black, they were going to try to kidnap you. They sold children, especially children, because they were easier to kidnap. It was just a big human trafficking thing. And it boggles my mind that we aren't, like, we don't really talk about this stuff in school, at least not at my school in Utah. And also, to counteract the end of the slave trade in 1808, you know what they did? They made breeding farms. And you can guess what that is. It was a rape farm. Girls as young as 13, you know, I wouldn't be that shocked if it was younger, but at least girls and women as young as 13 were sent to special plantations that were exclusively made for breeding, making new people to enslave. And I also didn't know about this. And I don't know, I'm just fuming right now because, like, I knew it was bad, but, like, doing, like, a little bit of your own research makes you realize how horrible it was. Like so much worse than I ever imagined. Another one, you may have heard about this, but if you haven't, let me tell you, the white people, the slave owners, would use African American hair for cushions, for couches, for insulation. They pulled people's teeth that had pretty nice teeth, whatever. They would pull them and turn them into fucking dentures and sell them to rich white people. And you know who had those fucking dentures? George Washington. He had teeth pulled from his slaves to make his own fucking dentures. No, his teeth were not wooden. That's a fucking myth. His teeth were made from slaves' teeth. I mean, they turned their skin into leather. Another thing, they used these people as much as they could. It's horrifying. Obviously, they exploited them for labor. That's the one we all know. But they also used women in particular for fucking medical experimentation. Do you want to know the reason we know so much about women's gynecology? Is because of the fucking human experimentation that happened to black women in the 1800s and before. Also, the sheer amount of rape that women had to endure from their fucking masters or whatever, don't get me fucking started. But the amount of rape that happened within, not just on plantations, but like during the slave trade, during auctions, it's just so disgusting. I saw a study that said that 16% of all African Americans can trace their ancestry back to Europe. That is because of rape. 16% of all African Americans today. And this video is 5 minutes long. I've been talking for a minute. I haven't even scratched the surface on the cannibalism. It makes me so angry. And guess what? It didn't fucking end with the Emancipation Proclamation. That was a great start, but it didn't fucking end. You really think those people that owned other people were just like, oh, well, it's illegal now. I guess I have to let you all go. No, that didn't fucking happen. They kept their slaves. They weren't all just suddenly freed because the president told them they had to. Really, guys? And even the slaves that were freed, guess what? They underwent so much horrific stuff for the rest of their lives. The rest of their lives. People don't realize how common and how brutal and how horrific and depraved lynchings were. Like, it's so insane to me. Like, when people are like, why shouldn't I feel bad about this? I didn't own a slave. Well, look at your fucking family history, guys. I looked at my family history. I had, because I'm really into family history, I had like my 5th great grandpa or something was from Kentucky, and his fucking will says, to my son, I leave an African American girl, well, I think he said Negro, I don't want to say that word though, named Luda. And it just made me feel so disgusted at my own heritage. Like, the fact that people don't feel shame at all. People are like, oh, well, whatever, like, it's in the past. That bothers me so fucking bad. And guess what? It isn't that far in the fucking past. It's not that far in the fucking past. Fucking, the first black girl to go to an all-white school, she's younger than Trump. She has fucking Instagram and TikTok. I don't know. I'm sorry I'm so heated. I probably just sound so stupid. But I'm just so disgusted right now. Just, like, thinking about it. And, like, I've written some stuff down. Just, like, it just makes me so angry. It didn't end in 1863. It didn't end in 1865. You, like, please, I want you to do your own research. I want you to find out as much as you can about this to understand how horrible it was, because we truly have no idea. Anyways, rant over. I hope I didn't word anything poorly, because I'm not thinking right now. I'm just kind of disgusted right now. So I hope that this wasn't too, like, sensitive. But yeah, that's it, guys.
Hey everybody, Professor Moore here. So the other day I was watching the video of conservative commentator Charlie Kirk debating 25 liberal college students, and one scene in particular really stood out to me. So in the scene, a student is discussing the racist violence that Black Americans faced for over a century in this country, and she points out how from the 1860s until the 1960s, 4,000 Black men, women, and children were lynched. Now, I think that it is so important that she's bringing lynching into the conversation because it is a critical topic to focus on if you really want to know the true history of the United States. However, the number of African Americans that were lynched in this country is far greater than 4,000. For many years, the best data that we had on lynching came from the Equal Justice Initiative. And in 2015, they released a study that found evidence for 4,400 lynchings of African Americans. However, in 2020, the Equal Justice Initiative released a new report that found evidence of an additional 2,000 lynchings, bringing the current number up to 6,500 lynchings of African Americans in this country. But even the number of 6,500 lynchings is probably still too low. And I guarantee that as more research is done, that number is going to continue to rise. And it's probably going to get closer to the estimate given by anti-lynching activist Ida B. Wells, who said that there was probably 10,000 lynchings of African Americans that occurred. However, even 10,000 might be a low estimate when we add in the number of African Americans that were killed in what were described as race riots. You might be familiar with the 1921 Tulsa massacre, in which hundreds of African Americans were killed by their white neighbors in Oklahoma. When I was doing research on lynching, I came across thousands of accounts of lynchings in historical newspaper databases. But another thing that I came across over and over again were these accounts of massacres that were the killing of not just individuals, but dozens and even hundreds of African Americans. Here's an example of a headline that I came across from 1873, which reads, "The War of Races. Nearly 300 Negroes burned to death by whites in Louisiana. A horrible affair." Now, can you imagine how much that number of 6,500 or 10,000 would grow if we add in all of these episodes of race riots and massacres that killed hundreds of people across the country? We'll probably never know the true number of African Americans that were killed through lynching or white supremacist violence because so many of these stories have left no trace at all in the historical record. For example, in Margaret Burnham's recent book by hands now known, Jim Crow's Legal Executioners, she begins by telling the story of Ollie Hunter. Ollie Hunter was a black woman in her 60s that was living in Georgia. And in 1944, she went to a general store. And while she was in the store, she picked up a can of oil. The white male owner of the store screamed at her to put down the can of oil, which she did, and then she walked out of the door. As she left the store, the owner came up behind her and brutally beat her to death with an axe. Now, in the book, Burnham notes that we would have never known about this murder if it wasn't for a single letter that an individual sent to the NAACP complaining about how the man who committed this murder was never charged with the crime. And it wasn't until 2020 when researchers finally recovered the name of Ollie Hunter and brought her story back into the light. Can you imagine how many more Ollie Hunters are out there? How many more stories of white supremacist violence that are untold and waiting to come into the light? That's why I always say the true number of lynchings will never be known. But even if we ever did come to an accurate number of how many African Americans were lynched in this country, that number will never be able to reflect the reality and the horror of living in a society that allowed this type of violence to happen.
Anytime we create anything, we can be sure of one thing: white people will be there greedily consuming it. But how crazy is it that for years, they were actually guilty of literally eating black bodies? White people are obsessed with us. They want to control us, oppress us, and if the current culture is any indication, they want to be us. But not many of us know that white consumption of blackness is sometimes literal. White cannibals aren't a figment of our historical imagination. Europeans often ate the mummified remains of Egyptians. Researchers argued it was for a substance Egyptian embalmers used to kill bacteria. But even when the health benefits of mummies were debunked, white people continued eating flesh. During the Atlantic slave trade, whites were known to eat the bodies of Africans when supplies ran low. Though it's suspected this occurred on many occasions, there is at least one documented case of this on the slave ship Aragante. White people also consumed lynching victims. When Nat Turner was captured after the revolt at Harper's Ferry, Virginia, enraged white people chopped him up to pieces, made accessories from his skin, and used the fat from his body to make grease. White people are obsessed with consuming us. Though they don't eat us as meals anymore, they still consume our culture. We should be careful about the white people we support and those we invite to the barbecue, especially since our well-being might be on the menu. Share this story and follow We Are Push Black for more Black history.
Thank you so much for watching this video. And as you have heard, Black Americans have really suffered in this America, because you can imagine during those times, white people used to eat black people, and this is not like a lie, it's something that is there. They used to take the skin of black people, used it to make belts or leather. You see the same way leather is used to make shoes and belt? That is what they used black people's skin for. And even much worse, they even used black babies as alligator bait. Like they didn't see black people as humans. They saw them as just things that were there. Like we were some animals, like black people didn't feel pain, black people shouldn't like live normally. Because I have seen these videos of people saying that black people didn't deserve to like even live in a house. Like they are black, they are meant to endure pain. And it is crazy, like knowing what has happened to black people and understanding right now when black Americans are fighting for equality up to date, and they are not even asking like, we want revenge for what happened to us. They just want to be equals, but they are treated like they are the worst things in America. Like they get blamed for literally everything, and they are told to forget their history, move past it. It happened a long time ago. And no one is taking accountability, but they want the black people to just forget about their history. And why should black people forget their history? Like when your white history is still taught in school and still influences black lives today. Do you even know during those times it was so illegal for black couples to even get married? Because how could you were just properties of those white people. And it's crazy and sad that humans treated other humans like this. And when you see videos like this of white people trying to pretend like it didn't happen, like it wasn't that bad, I'm always so angry, because it just makes me feel, I don't know. And that is why I always talk on respecting the black Americans, for us immigrants living in the United States. Because imagine, without the struggles and the fights and all of the things the black Americans went through, they still fought to be free. And it is because of them we get to enjoy so many things. And that is why when you see other communities disrespecting or calling them names, it just feels like you people are being ungrateful. Because I have seen some communities, like the Asian communities, saying how dirty, like black Americans are dirty. Like I've seen other immigrants even from Africa saying how black Americans are lazy. Do you think the freedom that has been earned for immigrants was fought by lazy people? Do you think lazy people could accomplish what the Black Americans have accomplished so that other immigrants and other Black people can enjoy this America and make a living without being bothered by people? Like, I know it's not like you wouldn't be bothered like 100%, but you're not going to go through the same shit their ancestors went through. Yeah, and that is why it hurts to see like us Black people in the diaspora just constantly fighting rather than asking ourselves where the issue is and trying to fix it. Yeah, I just hope, like, I'm not a fan for this diaspora war, but I hope it ends, and I hope we show respect where it should be shown, because the truth is that without the Black folks in America, we wouldn't be able to enjoy anything today. The reason we are able to even vote, it's because of them. And it's just so, it's crazy, yeah? Like, also, I have been watching videos and they're like, Black people didn't invent anything. And when a list is made of what Black people invented, they're always left like they're shocked. Because to them, Black people were stupid. To them, Black people were just slaves. They didn't get anything. And it's crazy how like some things are just influenced by jealousy, like seeing Black people having gone through all that struggle and still exhaling right now. It pisses them off and pisses everybody else off. And that is why we need to deal with our issues as Black people. Like, we need to be and stand together so that we can strengthen ourselves and not fight other Black people. Like, Black Americans, we should not fight them. Yeah, because as long as we came from our homes, we came and lived here, this is not our country. We are just visitors. Unlike Black Americans, this is their home and their history. So thank you so much for watching this video, and if you enjoyed it, please don't forget to subscribe. I hope you give this video a thumbs up and leave your thoughts in the comment section, and I hope to see you in my next video. So bye.